So, getting into the news, we have had some significant leaks when it comes to the Switch 2. Like, it has been ridiculous, the kind of stuff that's been coming up here. And, I mean, we'll get into, like, various things that have come up in general, but the biggest of those, if you're watching the video version, this is, I guess you could say it's a potential spoiler because there's one of the manufacturers who does accessories for the Switch, I believe it's Genki is the manufacturer. Yeah, Genki. They put out at CES. They have a trailer that essentially shows off what the Switch 2 looks like, albeit with like their special skin attached to it that gives like additional grip or whatever to the Switch 2 itself and various things. But we're gonna play that little trailer here in the background, and yeah, it's like basically confirming all the things that we already had seen about the Switch, as well as some additional features. The magnetic Joy-Cons being one of those things that attach and detach with that special button that was on the back of those shells that we had seen previously. It appears that there is some type of laser optical sensor on the inside of the right Joy-Con, and that there's like the color scheme that they're using, at least partially on the Joy-Con, is blue and orange, kind of like the Portal colors. And yeah, just various other things. But what are your thoughts on all of this? I mean, it's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, if I mean, I have no reason to believe that this isn't false. Also, I don't know if you wanted to mention this here, but about the what Genki said about the release date for this.
Oh yeah, potentially April of this year, which would make perfect sense. But yeah,
yeah, because they said they were gonna release it right alongside the Switch too, which. Yeah, I mean, considering the fact that Nintendo hasn't said anything, assuming all this stuff is true, man, Mario's doing a horrible job. He's a plumber and he can't fix all these leaks.
Mm-hmm.
That's just, he's not doing his job right. But it's interesting though. I really wanted to see how the magnetic Joy-Cons worked, because my mind really couldn't grasp it, especially the fact that I know you shouldn't technically just be able to easily pull it off, the Joy-Con off from the Switch console. But I was thinking, if it's magnetic, how does that work? Like, something's got to keep it fixed there, so it doesn't, become detached. So looking at the video, it makes sense. It does, technically remind me of the original Switch, where you have the button on the back, you press, and then you can slide your Joy-Cons off the rails. I guess this will be easier. One thing though, I mean, granted, this is probably possibly just because of the case itself. I don't know how easier it is to detach the Joy-Cons with the way it is, because at least with the, original Switch, it's a small button in the back. The way this one looks, it looks like, or at least because of the case shell around the Joy-Con, it looks like it's much larger, meaning it's possibly easier to press, which could be a problem if you accidentally press it and you detach your Joy-Con while you're holding it, which would be potentially bad because you might drop it. So I am partially concerned about that, but again, that would be something we'd have to see more so up close, especially without the case on the Joy-Con, so we actually know what it's like, because it could possibly be roughly the same size as the original one. As far as the optical sensor, that's definitely interesting. Nintendo definitely would have some sort of gimmick for it, similar with HD Rumble, of course, how they would actually implement it remains to be seen. I mean, there could be something that they're using. I mean, well, then no, I'll say they could technically, maybe even try doing something as far as like something that's more accurate, if not, even though it might not be the same. Let's say if they try to do something similar to like with the Wii remote with its with its sensor, but it might not be exactly as accurate, but maybe the way it's implemented could be something in a similar vein, because of the fact that it's not relying on pure gyro, but actually, sensing objects and whatnot. It could provide more accuracy in that department, but I would definitely say this is definitely a much larger, or at least from what it seems, a much larger. I mean, of course, we've also heard that from the original rumors and leaks, but just seeing it though, it definitely looks like a much larger device than the original Switch, which is interesting. Which, I mean, I do feel like they would probably introduce a Switch 2 Mini down the road for someone who wants something a little bit more portable. Though I also technically be curious to seeing how that would work as far as with some of the implementations. I mean, granted, Nintendo, they did stuff. Well, I think the Mini has HD Rumble, but if they do have a little Mini, I wonder how that would work, since with the standard Switch 2 having that little optical sensor, how they would implement any features in the Mini, since you can't detach Joy-Cons from the Mini Switch version. But yeah, overall interesting. I think I kind of like the curved shape of the dock more so than the square ones from the original dock.
Yeah.
I mean, I think just a little aesthetically better looking to me, but definitely will be interested in seeing more stuff. Now, assuming, of course, if it comes out in April, which personally, it's not too far off from March, which was when we were like sort of hoping it would be, because it would be nice to have it launch on the anniversary of the original Switch, but April's not too far off. That being said, though, it is January, this is normally the month where they would have a sort of direct, correct? Or would that be next month in February?
It seems to vary. I mean, when they did this, when they first did the like real actual direct for the Switch itself, that was in January.
Okay.
Well, that is, I mean, the reveal was October of 2016, and then the big on stage presentation that they did in Japan was January of 2017.
Okay. Then yeah, so I definitely feel like if it is coming out in April, we definitely will be hearing something this month. I would say maybe around the middle of the month, and considering the fact that they're usually on Wednesdays or something like that, I would say the 15th or the 22nd. That's gonna be my guess. They might, just shadow drop something saying, or at least an announcement saying, hey, we have a Nintendo Switch Direct. Probably say next Monday, they'll say like, hey, on the 15th, or maybe like on the 20th, on the 22nd, we have Nintendo Switch Direct, check it out. But I definitely believe that we'll hear something this month. But yeah, that's all I gotta say.
One thing I forgot to mention, one of the rumors with this is that this is actually going to have Hall effect joysticks, which if Nintendo does that, that is a wonderful thing. But I mean, I would imagine that after the disaster that has happened with the Switch Joy-Cons, I mean, I would hope that Nintendo would realize, yeah, we have to do the Hall effect, because even if it costs them a little bit more money, they've spent so much money fixing Joy-Cons that they needed to have something that was going to be basically foolproof, or something that wasn't going to break down. One thing I do want to mention, because I made a mistake earlier, I said that the optical sensor was in the right Joy-Con, and it's actually the left Joy-Con. So one of the things that's interesting that I saw is, as a theory, is that basically some people have speculated they could end up having a mouse mode for the Joy-Con. So the optical sensor would essentially be like the sensor in a mouse. And so you'd like theoretically put it on its side and use it like a mouse. And the idea of that intrigues me, but from a practical standpoint, I don't know how that would work because a mouse has a lot more to grip. And like I grabbed one of my Joy-Cons and I held it on its side like as much like a mouse as I could, and it's like my hands are way too big for this. This just is ridiculous. Now, if it had some type of shell that you could attach to it to make it function like a mouse, like I could see how the buttons themselves, like the shoulder buttons, could work as mouse buttons. But it's the rest of it that I don't know how that would work unless Nintendo specifically made that an option. And I do think that that would be really cool if they did something like that because, you know, you got shooters, for example. You know, there's definitely examples of games where a mouse controls are better, always, than joysticks for aiming. But I just don't see practically exactly how that would work unless they have some type of special shell that would attach to it to make it possible to do that. So we'll have to wait and see what actually happens. But one thing that's also interesting about this is that I've noticed in watching this trailer more, I think actually most of the trailer is actually just showing like legit footage of the Switch 2 without a shell, without any sort of, actually, no, never mind. I was thinking, oh, this could actually be the real, like this is what the actual shell looks like of the Switch 2 on its own. But then I realized, no, there's definitely some spots where it doesn't have the, I mean, where it has the gaps and stuff to where it's pretty obvious that it's just a special shell that Genki made for the Switch. So I don't know exactly how all that's going to work, but either way, I think this is definitely legitimate and that this is what the Switch 2 is going to look like. And, you know, from what we can tell, it appears to be an improvement on the original version, but at the same time also keeps enough of the form factor, like the positives of the original Switch's form factor, to where it could work really well. So I'm optimistic about it from that standpoint. Obviously there's still a whole lot of questions and we have to wait for Nintendo's official reveal, an explanation of what the Switch 2 does differently. But yeah, the one thing that okay, so there's also like this special C button, which is something new underneath the home button, and we have no idea what it's supposed to do. Some people have theorized that it could be basically making it so that it that the C button is a cast button, like that essentially you'd be able to do dual screen type functionality, similar to the Wii U, except in reverse. Which, I mean, theoretically, you think about it, phones can cast to TVs. I mean, granted, most of the time it's just basically bringing up, you know, like a YouTube video on the app, just that sort of thing, and you're not actually playing it from your phone, you're just having it display, I mean, like choosing from your phone, and then it plays it on the TV. But I don't know. That's one theory that people have had, and I think that that's an interesting concept. Because I do think that the Wii U in some ways was ahead of its time, but at the same time was also, you know, well, I mean, really, it was ahead of its time what it was trying to do. It's just that the technology wasn't there. You know, they couldn't make it as an actual Switch, and if they could do some of that same functionality, that could be pretty cool. One thing that I was just thinking of that could be pretty neat is with Xenoblade Chronicles X, since that's coming later. I mean, I think it's in April, which actually it would be after the launch of the Switch 2 if it's coming in April, is being able to do all that dual screen functionality that the original game had, except that you would be sending the signal of the game itself to the TV and then just, you know, still using the Switch as the gamepad screen. So that could be interesting. But you know what else just occurred to me. This could be why they have held off on doing Wind Waker HD and Twilight Princess HD, so that they could do all the map functionality, all the gamepad functionality that way. So that's another idea, another thought I had. One thing I will have to say is that I think I have thought of a solution that enables me to get a Switch 2 at launch, but not feel like I'm wasting my money because it wouldn't be an OLED screen. That solution is that I would get it as a family system. It would basically just be on the TV. And that way, because it's like, you know, my kids are all playing games now, it would be an opportunity for us to play some games together, but, you know, at the same time would give me the ability to test stuff out for videos and that sort of thing. And then, you know, down the line, whenever they do an OLED model, that would be specifically my Switch 2. So at least that's what I'm contemplating. I mean, like, I haven't made any firm decisions, in large part because, like, I don't know what the price is going to be, and I don't know, you know, if there's any good family games that be coming at launch, because yes, while it does have backwards compatibility, you know, already confirmed by Nintendo, whether or not it would be worth spending the money to play backwards compatible games unless they were, you know, dramatically improved. I mean, there's only a handful of, like, multiplayer games that we would even play, and it's basically like Mario Kart, Mario Party, and that's about it, because my kids haven't yet gotten into Smash Brothers. And even if they did, it's like, well, Smash Brothers already runs at 60 frames per second on the Switch. So, I mean, what leap would they take beyond that? The only thing that I could see, like, being an improvement for Mario Kart would be that it would actually be able to do 60 frames per second in multiplayer, whereas when you're doing multiple people on the same Switch, it drops down to 30. So, but I can't remember if there were any other, like, rumors or, you know, stuff attached to it based on what we've seen in the videos. I know that from what I was seeing with the magnets, you know, with the release buttons, I think actually it would be basically, unless your fingers are curving all the way around the triggers, you are not likely to accidentally press those. And I know, like, holding my Switch, for example, at least the way I hold it, I never curve my fingers enough around, and you know, my hands are pretty large, but, like, let me actually grab it right now. So when I'm holding my Switch, you know, even without the grip on, I mean, with the grip on, it's even more so. My hands are more spread out, but, you know, like, I'm not in any way in danger of reaching over and touching the little buttons on here. Like, I have to be intentional in doing that, and with the bigger buttons, because my fingers are on the triggers, you know, it would be hard to do that. So I don't think that that's going to be a problem. It looked like there was, like, rods that go in to the Switch, and some have also theorized that there's, like, magnets that rotate, but I think it's mostly the rods. Like, the rods go in, and when you press the button to release, then it pulls the rod out enough to where it detaches the magnet, essentially. But I'm sure that they've been researching this heavily so that they're much less likely to have problems with it. Either way, I'm very intrigued by the system, and I just hope that there's some significant, like, incentives to make it worthwhile, because really right now, apart from the idea of being able to test some stuff out, for me, I don't know what the incentive would be for me to grab a Switch 2. I mean, yeah, I would grab it as a family system and then get the OLED down the line, but I guess a lot of it's just going to depend also on what we find in terms of, you know, what the launch lineup is, what kind of games are coming out with it. Like, actually, if Mario Kart 10 dropped with it at launch, I mean, that would be obvious. Like, be like, yes, I absolutely have to get that at launch. And then that would be something I could play with my kids, because right now they're all playing Mario Kart 7 on their 2DSs. And so it's like, hey, we could play Mario Kart 10 or 11 or whatever they call it together. Mario Kart 9, I don't know. I guess it would probably be either 9 or 10, depending on whether they count Mario Kart Tour as Mario Kart 9. But anyway, I'm intrigued. I'm very interested. I'm just anxious for Nintendo to show it, and then we can talk more about it. I mean, obviously, this video pretty much seems to confirm more or less what the Switch 2 looks like, but I still would like to see like the official thing from Nintendo, have something significant to talk about besides just what we see in the pictures, and just make this whole thing more interesting. So yeah, that's what I got.
Now this, something I just remembered, this wasn't necessarily related to this, and it was just something that people have been throwing around, was the discussion of the Switch 2 potentially having some sort of DLSS and using AI to upscale the games. Do you think that's something that Nintendo would actually be considering doing, since, graphics haven't been their primary objective, or do you think this is something that they would technically be using to, say, improve the performance of original Switch games to get them to the higher resolutions, but also still have potentially boosting the performance of the original games as well?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's very likely DLSS is going to be involved. I'm hoping that it's not frame generation, because I really hate frame generation, but or at least if they are using frame generation, that it's optional, because I don't want frame generation. But I know at the very I believe at the very least that DLSS will be used as part of the upscaling for 4K TVs, because this game is going to be 4K capable, just not obviously native 4K. It's going to be just like, with the PlayStation 5 and the Xbox Series consoles, where it doesn't actually render the majority of the games at 4K. This one won't render at 4K, period, but it will still, I believe, be able to upscale to 4K, because upscaling doesn't really take any real extra horsepower to do. I mean, you could do it on a lot of PCs. It's just a matter of doing a setting in the graphics card in order for it to upscale to 4K without actually having to render anywhere near that. But yeah, I think it's going to be impressive what it does in terms of how it looks and everything on 4K displays. It's just obviously you're going to have fanboys who think it's actually rendering at 4K, and they'll be completely wrong. Because people don't understand how technology works.
Well, that's all that I have. But just that was just one last thing I just remembered I wanted to ask about.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously, this is all just my opinion, speculation, educated guess, that sort of thing. But I'm anxious to see what they're gonna actually do with this, because it's like we're getting all these leaks and all these questions, and like half of me is wondering, is Nintendo doing this on purpose? Like they're actually leaking these things ahead of time, because it doesn't seem like they've made any effort to pull these things down. But at the same time, you look at like the Genki video, that looks real, like that. And with everything else we've seen, between the shells and, I mean, it's just like confirming all these things we've already seen, and Nintendo doesn't seem to be trying to pull anything down. So maybe this is just their marketing strategy. They're just putting stuff out early because, unlike with the Switch 1, I mean, with the Switch 1, it was like we had no real idea of what it was going to be, apart from, like a few things here and there that had leaked out, but it was like more like patents and that sort of thing, and what people were reporting in terms of what the Switch was going to do, being the hybrid and all of that. But now it's like we have essentially pictures of the actual hardware, or at least a render that represents the hardware in a way that's probably accurate. You have accessory manufacturers saying this is that the Switch is coming at this time frame in spring 2025. That you have, and they have essentially what appears to be stuff that is supposed to be available for the Switch 2. It's like, I could see this being a potential quote-unquote 4D chess move for Nintendo, because other companies do stuff like this too, where they're just putting this stuff out ahead of time. They're leaking it so that they can get people more hyped up in preparation. And then when they actually reveal it, it's not like when you leak a game ahead of time or whatever and spoil surprise or what have you. It's more like, this is not necessarily surprising because it's another Switch, but it is different. There's some differences that it's like everybody's wondering, okay, what is this? What does this do? What does the C button do? What is the optic sensor? What does it do? What do these things do? What are the joysticks? Hall effect joysticks? Is there a mouse mode? I mean, what is all this? What is it? And we all want to know. And even though you and I are more or less reformed Nintendo fanboys, or recovering Nintendo fanboys, however you want to see it, because we're much more PC gamers, it's still, what Nintendo does is far more exciting to me than what Sony and Microsoft do in general. Though, obviously, if either one of them puts out a new handheld, particularly Microsoft, seeing what they do with that would be pretty exciting. It's just at the same time, it's less exciting because it's still just kind of the same thing over and over. And Nintendo, even though, yes, the Switch 2 basically seems to be like just a better version of the Switch, it's also something where that Nintendo's going to have some gimmick that has a potential to be really interesting. Especially with that optical sensor. It's like, what is that? How is that going to work? Is it going to be a mouse mode? Is it something entirely different? Obviously, it works in some way. With there was like that video, that you could see the laser coming through that hole, and that's what you have on a mouse. So, what is it? But anyway, I think we've talked enough about the Switch 2 for now, and maybe by this time next week we will have the actual reveal of the Switch 2, and we'll be able to talk in depth about what Nintendo has actually said or what they show in their official trailer. And maybe it'll still be a while, who knows.